to the It's in Queens podcast, the podcast that celebrates the borough that has it all. I'm your host, Jeff Simmons, and this is the only podcast that focuses on Queens. This podcast is brought to you each week thanks to the Queens Economic Development Corporation and the Queens Tourism Council. They work tirelessly to showcase our borough as a destination that's filled with great experiences and cultural gems, opportunities for everyone, whether you live here, you work here, or perhaps you may be visiting from near or far. It is hard not to start this week's podcast off by not noting what a fantastic weekend this past weekend was. The kind of weather that had so many people out walking around, soaking up the sunshine and exploring Queens in all directions. And there is so much to discover this season, from neighborhood restaurants and bakeries to public art, gardens, museums, and hidden blocks you may have never strolled down before. Queens is one of those places that rewards curiosity at every turn. With baseball season now afoot, I'm sure a lot of baseball lovers are also discovering a pure Instagram moment at Citi Field, a beautiful sign celebrating Queens designed by Queens' own Larry Eng. Larry Eng is a Queens artist whose work has become part of the borough's public landscape, and this sculpture is a perfect example of how art can help tell Queens' story in a bold, memorable way. The sculpture, Queens, the World's Borough, was originally displayed in Forest Hills McDonald Park before recently being relocated to Citi Field, where it now has a new home in a much more visible, high-traffic setting. It's a striking piece, painted in the red, white, and blue of the Queens flag, and it is meant to reflect the borough's history, diversity, and energy. So let's get to this week's interview with Larry Eng. Larry Eng, welcome to the It's in Queens podcast.
Pleasure talking to you, Jeff.
Okay, before we get into the new Queens, the World's Borough piece, I'd love to first find out more about you and share. So if you could share a little about your path as an artist and what first drew you to public art and design.
Actually, I'm really not an artist. I call myself a creator. So what drew me to this particular work, right? I always felt that Queens was not as well promoted in the city as it should be. So Manhattan's like obviously the center of New York, right? And then Brooklyn, for some reason, became the cool place. They had all these great taglines, believe the hype, forget about it.
Forget about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I felt that Queens, right, should be celebrated, right? And what really makes Queens unique, it's actually the most diverse landscape, right, in the world, right? All right. It's actually in the Guinness Book of World Records as stated as that. Right. So therefore, right, how do I best promote Queens? Right. And then I caught this catchphrase, the world's borough. Right. I said, that's pretty interesting. So we should basically have a big sign that says Queens, right? And celebrate its diversity of people and cultures. Let's call it the world's borough. So that's how Queens, the world's borough came about. So in reality, I'm not an artist. Right. I just basically had this idea to basically celebrate Queens and its uniqueness.
And that's what this podcast is about, too. It's about celebrating Queens. And you have said that Queens is a mosaic of America's rich and vibrant multicultural history. What personal experiences growing up or living here most shaped your vision?
Well, just walking around the streets, right? You see all these different foods, right? You hear different languages, right? And people from all throughout the world, right? They come and live pleasantly together, right? So that growing up, right, in New York City, you just kind of feel the vibe of the cultural differences, right? We celebrate everything.
So walk us through the design itself. How did you land on the design? Talk a little about this. And of course, any partners, anyone who's been with you through this whole process.
Well, Northwell Health has been with me at the very beginning, right? So they were my financial sponsor and generally partner from the very beginning of the particular project, right? So a huge shout out to Northwell Health, right? So the idea for the design, I happen to know, I've met a few times, right? A guy by the name of Milton Glaser. He designed the original I Love New York logo. I don't know if you remember that one, right? I, Heart, and Y, right? So in honor of him, he passed a few years ago. In honor of him, I decided to basically use his exact font. So the font is called American Typewriter. So it basically has an American kind of like feel to it, right? All right. And it's the I Love New York font, right? So that's the font. And what's interesting about that font, it has this interesting Q, right? That has these squiggles. All the letters are kind of interesting, right? So that's the font. The colors, right? Red, white, and blue, right? Come from the Queen's flag. Most people don't know Queens has its own flag, right? So I took the colors of the Queen's flag and made it the color of the sculpture. And then the catchphrase, right? The world's borough. Interesting piece of trivia. Uh, um, when they were trying to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the World's Fair, they were trying to come up with a tagline for Queens, right? And they came up with the World's Borough because of its diversity. So that's really the genesis of the design of the sculpture.
So when was the sculpture first launched and where has it been located? Because I think some people who might be driving around the borough or walking around might have seen it and not really known much about its background. So I'd love also for people to know, oh yes, that's where I saw it and where maybe I could see it now.
So I happen to live in Forest Hills. So selfishly, I decided to basically place it in my local park. There's a park called McDonald Park in Forest Hills, right? That's at the intersection of Queens Boulevard and Yellowstone Boulevard. It's a major thoroughfare. And it's like a couple of blocks away from the transportation hub of Queens, which is Continental Avenue, right? So I personally thought that would be a perfect location for it.
And this project involved a number of community partners. You mentioned Northwell Health. What did you learn about the collaboration and community support process, throughout this? Because you credited Northwell Health and what I love about living in this borough is no one operates in a silo. There's so many community organizations and people who support each other. And I'll bet you learned a lot through this process.
Well, Northwell Health, so basically, right, I began telling about people about this particular project, and I was beginning a fundraising campaign, right, all right, and us solicit, right, Northwell Health tracked me down and says, "Oh, we love the messaging, we love the how you're celebrating Queens and its diversity, right, all right, we want to get involved on the get-go." So basically, once I had them, right, all right, I didn't really have to kind of fundraise anymore, pretty much, right, all right, and they've been with me since the very beginning of the project.
Okay, from the first moment that I saw this, I immediately had the reaction, this is an Instagram ready sculpture. And from what I understand, it's become a photo spot, even a meeting place. What kind of interactions or stories have you heard about people who've seen this sculpture and encountered it?
It's very popular, right? Because at McDonald Park, it's right across from Trader Joe's, and tens of thousands of people just walk by the Trader Joe's every day, so they see the sculpture, right? And then it happens to be along Queens Boulevard. So anybody that drives along Queens Boulevard, which is like hundreds of thousands of cars, right, every couple of days, right, see the sculpture. So it's in a great location. But
What
what's really heartwarming to me is basically seeing little kids, right, asking their parents to take photos in front of the sculpture. And a favorite spot, if you look at the letters, right, they like to sit on the letter U and the letter N, right? So you'll see parents, right, sit their kids on the letter U and the letter N, and one of the parents will basically pop their head through the Q, and that's where the photo happens, right? And you see that very frequently.
it's interesting because, I think of even like the Wall Street Bull that they don't want people sitting on top of it, but this is a sculpture where it is okay for people to touch it and to sit on it, correct?
Yeah, I purposely made it kind of ground floor level so it's approachable, right? Because too much art is on a pedestal, right? All right, of some person in history, right? All right. It's really not exciting for a lot, especially young kids, right? All right. This is a fun, colorful thing they could basically play around with, right? Which was the original intent.
Given the response that you've been getting and even just sharing some of those anecdotes about what people are doing with it, how does it make you feel?
Oh, it's terrific. It's terrific. The community loves it. In fact, they were sad to see it go. As of this past Monday, I moved it right to Citi Fields, right? All right, because an agreement with New York Parks. It was a 1 year exhibition, right, at McDonald Park, and the year was pretty much up, so I had to move it someplace, right? And fortunately, Citi Fields was excited to basically move it there, right, for their fans.
So your hope then, Larry, would really be that the Mets go to the World Series so that the entire nation will see this at some point, correct?
Yes, yes, yeah. Let's go Mets.
So before I let you go, what else is next for you artistically? Any other public art projects or ideas you're excited about so that we can share with our listeners about your career and what's the next chapter?
I I have no plans right now, right? This has been a 2 year long journey, right? All right, to get this thing through, right? All right. So I'm just happy so many people love it, and I'm happy it just moved to City Fields, right? All right, where more people enjoyed it as well.
Oh, and one more question, Larry, before you go. If people want to learn more about you and your work, where should they go?
Yeah, they should visit our website. It's called www.queens-nyc.com.
Larry Eng, I want to thank you so much for appearing with us here on the It's in Queens podcast.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Right? Have a good one.
And when you visit Citi Field, why not make a whole day of it? Step into Flushing Meadows Corona Park too. This is one of the best times of year to just walk around and discover what's there. The open space, the landmarks, the gardens, the trails, and frankly, the people. All the ways the park keeps revealing something new each time you visit. You can easily turn that into a full Queens outing with a stop at the park, a walk through the grounds, a chance to explore the kind of local details that make this borough feel endlessly surprising. And when you're there, you might want to drop by Queens Theater and Queens Museum. Queens has that rare ability to mix big moments with everyday discoveries, and that's part of what makes a spring visit here so rewarding. And if you're looking for something else to do this month or next, we have you covered. Let's move on to our next segment with Rob Mackay of the Queens Economic Development Corporation and the Queens Tourism Council. He joins us to highlight some of the great events, happenings, and seasonal adventures waiting for you around the borough.
Well, Jeff, we have a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee who is also an Oscar and Grammy winner coming to town here in Queens. Darlene Love will offer a concert entitled Love Songs at Colden Auditorium this Saturday, April 25th at 8 p.m. Among numerous Billboard hits, Darlene is known for He's a Rebel, The Boy I'm Gonna Marry, Wait Till My Bobby Gets Home, and really she's best known for Christmas Baby Please Come Home, which she would sing every year on the late night show with David Letterman. I think she had more than 3 decades singing it annually. So patrons can expect a night of romantic songs coupled with Darlene's sort of storytelling and jokes and whatever else comes to mind while she's on stage. It should be a lot of fun, and Colton Auditorium, which is located on Queens College's campus, has several free parking lots, so you can't beat that. All right, thanks, Jeff. Talk to you next week.
Thanks, Rob. And as always, that is just a few of the things happening in our borough. To keep discovering what's next, well, head right over to the It's in Queens website at itsinqueens.com. And for business resources and updates, well, then you need to head right over to the Queens Economic Development Corporation's website at queensny.org. And when you're there, take a moment, sign up for their newsletter. Now, when you visit any place in Queens, and especially when you see Larry Eng's sign, snap some photos, share them with us. Make sure to use the hashtag #It'sInQueens when you post on Instagram or on X, which was formerly known as Twitter, because your photo could become our photo of the week. I'm your host, Jeff Simmons. I'm headed back outdoors in this wonderful weather. So that's it for this week's It's in Queens podcast.